Why am I opening this channel? It's to share with you my hunt for a deviant chimera. An idea I've been long dragging my brains with, and I have realized it might have more sense than I had initially given to it. But if I let it out point blank just like that, it's not going to work. It's going to be misunderstood. That's why I prefer to start by breaking down the thoughts that drove me towards it and let them slowly sketch up the whole thing. It's about physics foundations, and that crisis they say there's in them. I warn you in advance that I do not intend to do scientific communication or anything like that. I certainly won't be by the books, and I won't stick to the established theories. Because what I want is to generate doubts about them. And I also expect that from those doubts, new possibilities will arise. New possibilities to explore with you, if you want to join me. Even when it's not my purpose to fully explain it, today I need to start with a brief introduction to the principle of least action in physics, the classical one. Because later, at the end of the video, I'm going to make you a question about it. I won't be exhaustive, so if you want more complete explanation about the principle and how it works, I'll leave you some links in the description for that.
Least action principle works as a recipe for the future. Let me explain. It can be formulated as follows. Any physical system will evolve between two arbitrary instants of time,
T1 and T2,
following a trajectory that will minimize the quantity, the action, S. Action is built in a cumulative manner, since we define it using an integral in time of another quantity, the Lagrangian. The Lagrangian is the function that contains the secret of the physics that rule our system. It is likewise defined using other variables. We call them generalized coordinates, but also their time derivatives. These coordinates can be anything we want, as long as they define completely the system. We must have as many as degrees of freedom there are in our system. We certainly have to find out the correct Lagrangian, but once this is done, the rest is straightforward. After some methodological steps, you can know everything of your system at any instant of time. I must clarify that the Lagrangian alone provides only with the full family of the possible trajectories of the system. But if you specify sufficient conditions, the so-called boundary conditions, and you do that using the generalized coordinates, then all those trajectories will reduce to a single univocal one.
I can think of many other things I'd like to point out about the principle, but they are not crucial for what here and now I'm up to. So I will leave them as explanatory notes in the comments, and I'll go on. What is critical for what I want to tell you is the very creepy nature of the idea. As we are saying that we can predict the future of anything if we have enough initial information about it, and that we can do so using a tool that is, after all, calculation, be it more or less complicated. We could even say it is a computation with some nuances because it is on the real numbers, but it is still something that is taken as input the present and is giving us as output the future. In fact, this principle has been criticized for being teleological, and that is, it seems to suggest that the nature seeks an end by itself. And the criticism makes a lot of sense from the point of view of its all-time embracing nature, since it feels like the system knows what the least path action is and chooses to follow it.
Philosophical stuff apart, there is something clear about it. It works. It is one of the most powerful, fruitful, and versatile concepts that physics has ever found. It is applicable and very effective for classical mechanics, electromagnetism, and special and general relativity. In quantum mechanics, it is still very valuable, but it's no longer the same thing. It must be reformulated using the Feynman path integral formalism, so that the action of not only one path anymore, but all the possible paths conform a probability. This reformulation is key for what I want to communicate in this channel. But for what I want to discuss right now, it will mostly distort the idea. So I'm going to ask you to just forget about everything that has to do with quantum mechanics ideas, just for a while, of course. Just think that you are living in the 19th century and you have the prevailing ideas at the time. What I want you to consider is if such a theory with that predictive power beforehand can truly exist in our world, or on the contrary, contains some type of hidden trap within its own design. But all this is quite cool and abstract. So let's better go to an example. Imagine a spaceship in outer space. Call it N. It is on a reconnaissance mission on a barren planet. Assume the ship is point-like and is under the gravitational field of the planet. Let us call the planet P. Alright, at a given moment, it suffers a critical engine failure and is left completely adrift. I think most of us will agree that in this situation we can apply the minimization principle to determine the spacecraft trajectory. It's a classic problem. Or it gets lost in space, or it will enter an orbit around planet P, or it's also possible that it will end up crashing on its surface. Let's assume that's the case. We introduce the initial conditions for position and velocity of the moment the engines stopped to 0. We obtain the equations of motion, and it turns out that the trajectory leads the spacecraft to crest on the surface of P at a time which we will call T1. I think up to here it's clear, but now let's make the story a bit more interesting.
The ship N is manned by the captain K, the crew T, and their supercomputer Q. None of them can intervene to change the trajectory of the ship, with its engines fatally emits. However, Kitty and his crew survived the crash. There are severe damages to the aircraft. The communications system is unresponsive and supplies are minimal. Q's analysis of the situation seems to portend a fatal fate. The crew panics, but K remains calm and uses his charisma to convince the crew to try to repair the engines despite the fact that Q gives no chance of survival. After several days of work, stress and effort, K and his crew have managed to repair the ship and take off again. Now the ship N is on the way back home. Let us call this instant T2.
Do you remember that at the beginning of the video, I told you I would propose a question? Well, here it is. As I applied the principle between T0 and T1 to know the trajectory of the spacecraft until it crashes against a planet, could I do the same and apply it between T0 and T2 or T1 and T2? Using all the coordinates needed to fully determine planet, spacecraft, captain, crew, and supercomputer, as many as they are needed. And the principle would work the same and tell us that at time T2, the spacecraft is going back to Earth after all this story takes place. You might say, of course, that it is a too complicated system like that to apply the principle. I agree, but I'm not going that way. It's a theoretical approach, so you can assume you have the computational power needed to process all the data. I also remembered you that the idea is you to forget about quantum matters. Obviously, I'm appealing to consciousness and free will issues, but that's kind of diffuse. So, if you think like that, could you substantiate the reason why the principle might fail in that case? I really want to know what you think about this. In the next chapter, I will tell you my approach.